One of the things that make the Beverage Forum so valuable is not just the conversations, but the data that grounds those conversations in reality. And when it comes to understanding what people are eating and drinking, nobody, and I mean nobody, knows more than Circana. Circana is the leader in providing technology, AI, and data to the world's fastest-moving consumer packaged goods companies, durable goods, manufacturers, and retailers. They are the definitive source of omnichannel information on food and beverage consumption. For decades, they have helped us see around the corners and make better decisions about where this industry is headed. I am thrilled to welcome someone who has dedicated his career to helping our industry grow smarter, stronger, and sharper. As SVP of Thought Leadership in Europe and trusted CPG growth advisor, he's got his finger on the pulse of what's really driving change across Europe. Please join me in welcoming to the stage Ananda Roy from Circana.
Good morning, conference. It's an absolute pleasure to have the Beverage Forum in Europe. We've been to events in the US and there's nothing like it. And to have the Beverage Forum here and this audience here and the rest of the proceedings during the day is absolutely stunning. My name is Ananda, as Danny introduced me. Circana, for those of you who are aware, is a market research and data technology company. We analyze about $5.1 trillion of retail sales data and consumer data and use that to inform insights, strategic directions for some of the world's largest companies. We also do that for small and mid-sized businesses, and my colleague Alex here would be very happy to talk to you if you are looking for broader insights than the ones that I'm about to share with you today. Right, so the horizons that we're going to be talking today are in a very, very changeable, uncertain world. And what we want to do is to kind of paint a picture of the European beverage landscape for you, and then talk about respect for the existing category code, but clearly a time for a change in direction, perhaps a reinvention. And then I'd like to try and package it all up together in what we're calling the new horizons for the beverage industry in Europe. Okay? But let's start at the beginning. The European beverage landscape. Now, what we're seeing here is that the European beverage landscape, alcohol and non-alcohol combined, is about 116 billion euros in the 6 largest grocery markets, which is France, Spain, Germany, Italy, the Netherlands, and the UK. The other markets are important, but these 6 markets move the needle. And what we very, very clearly see is that the growth in the industry has really been down to the non-alcoholic beverages, as Danny has mentioned. So 5.1% growth in value sales driven by non-alcohol. Now, it's quite interesting because when you look at it from an industry structure perspective, it's the ambient and the chilled part of the market that's really growing. So from a volume perspective, the total alcohol business has grown by about 0.6% in volume terms. But if you look at where that growth is, the growth really is in the non-alcoholic beverages volume, which is about 1.2% up. The decline has not offset all of the losses, thank God. But the real focus of this conversation is really going to be about chilled and ambient drinks. Many of you are founders, entrepreneurs, retailers, drivers of that business. Now, the volume challenge that is very evident when you see hot drinks, dairy-based drinks, alcoholic drinks, volume declines. The volume challenge is very much a function of incredibly high pricing, and that's had an impact on demand. What you see really is sports and energy drinks, plant-based beverages, ready-to-drink spirits. That's where a lot of the forward energy in terms of volume growth is at the moment. And this is an inescapable fact, and this is something that we shouldn't shy away from, is the fact that the alcohol industry is facing a generational shift. there has been a significant decline in alcohol consumption, and this is not a short-term blip. What we're seeing is, whether you look at the WHO figures or Circana's figures, you see that over the last 20 years, there has been a significant decline, and that's accelerating. In fact, the negative CAGR of about minus 2.5% of decline in volume consumption of alcohol suggests that there is a structural issue in that industry. Now, it's not all bad news because there is a role for iconic brands, premiumization, exciting experiences, and so on, but it's not necessarily a volume game anymore. Now, this generational shift is quite interesting because when you look at our research, we are hearing, when we talk to consumers across these 6 big European markets, 71% of consumers are telling us that they're buying less, stocking up less, or using less alcohol. 23% of young Gen Z consumers and some millennials have stopped buying alcohol altogether. Now, what is really interesting is when you ask them why they have stopped drinking alcohol, is because they're looking for something that fits their lifestyle, fits their new dietary choices, something that's much more refreshing. And that's where a whole range of new products, and Danny mentioned just a few brands, but a whole range of new products are entering the space, whether it's adaptogens, nootropics. You've got all of the female skewed beverages that we're now seeing coming through, high protein, meal replacements, and so on. Private labels are a significant player, a strategic player in this space, and particularly when you look at it from a non-alcohol perspective, you see that one of the biggest competitors you will have are private labels, retailer-owned store labels. That is where the focus is going to be because they're not playing on price, they're playing on image, quality, in many cases creating emotional bonds with consumers that consumers are now reacting to and being able to appreciate, even though the brands may not necessarily be on their fingertips. A couple of points on innovation, and this is a really interesting one. Innovation is actually down. There have been 16% fewer new product launches in the space because retailers have tended to be quite risk-averse across the range of categories, but even in beverages, what you're seeing is portfolio optimization, focus on growth segments. And as a result, what we're seeing is 16% fewer new product launches. And as a consequence, an impact on unit sales as well as value sales contribution. The innovations that have launched have not necessarily been able to command a premium either. Typically, innovations are at a premium price. But what we're seeing now is a slightly risk-averse climate in Europe. And that is not to say that it is not a good time to invest in innovation. In fact, if anything, the category risks becoming an innovation desert. So this is a good time to be innovating. And some of the ideas that you're bringing to the table, some of the beverages that we hopefully are going to taste tomorrow, are opportunities for growth. A quick comment on sustainability, and this is a question I get asked of very often. You know, are consumers really interested in sustainability? Do they do what they say they will? And what we're clearly seeing is that at the moment, it is a retailer-driven market for sustainability. I'll touch upon that in a second. What we're seeing is consumers are interested in sustainability, but affordability and availability is the biggest constraint. So the products are simply not available to buy on shelves. Distribution levels for sustainable options have been lower than the normal range. And because of their premium prices, the laws of mathematical sort of laws of pricing apply. Price elasticities are not favoring sustainability. So it's not a choice driver, but it's definitely a purchase driver. So as a very, very quick summary, what we're saying is the alcohol industry is facing a generational shift, and this is the perfect time for disruption. Growth has been in the ambient and the chilled sector. You're seeing innovation, which is a robust source of organic demand, actually not performing to its best. We need more innovation in the space. And when we have that, you are going to see retailers change their attitude. At the moment, quite risk-averse, but they are looking at, particularly with their private label ranges, are looking at certain pockets of growth. So let's talk a little bit about that in the next section. Respect and reinvention. Now, this is an interesting section because what we've done is we have used AI to try and paint a picture for us in terms of where the industry is at the moment. Now, what we're seeing is that there is a significant opportunity to reinvent the beverage category distinctively. And I'm going to point you to 6 key areas. The first one is the evolving category code. The second is understanding the role of adjacent categories. The third is a comment on sustainability and CSR, which is critical. The fourth is a point on disruptive innovation, and particularly for the alcohol industry, where it's absolutely critical. Functional beverages, which is a topic that we'll be talking about a lot today. And then finally, engaging audiences, particularly in a very fragmented media landscape. So let's take the first point on the opportunities for the Beverage Forum. Using AI, we were able to try and paint a picture for you. This is a mood board of the evolving world of beverages. Now, what you see on the left-hand side here on the screen today are images of the world of beverages. And what you see is it's a very traditional world. You're seeing sommeliers, you're seeing social outings, you're seeing bars, you're seeing various kinds of drinks, very warm, rich tones. It's all about the heritage and drinking responsibly in moderation and so on. Now, if you use the same AI modules to try and then understand the new world of consumers, you can see it's a completely different picture. And this illustrates the difference or the gap between where the industry is today as a whole and where consumers are going. Consumers are looking for underconsumption, more functional beverages. They're looking for health, wellness, traveling, color. The entire viewpoint is so different. And then when you look further afield into the future, what are the big trends that are going to move the future of demand? You are seeing even elements of spirituality, subcultures, and so on. I think the point we're trying to make here is we need to move the industry from the left to the right. We need to recognize that there is a generational shift with consumers, their attitudes, not only to things like sustainability, but also wellness, health, intergenerational relationships, spiritual care. All of these things are changing, and brands need to reflect some of those changes. The second opportunity that I want to play for you is around adjacent categories. And this is a really interesting example about snacking. Now, you would think the snacking category sits adjacent to beverages. Why do I care? The snacking category is growing significantly. In fact, it's almost at about 6% CAGR in terms of its growth. So very, very robust growth in Europe. But what you're seeing is when you look at the top snack categories that are the highest selling items, you are seeing things like gut-friendly yogurt drinks. You are seeing a range of very, very, very crisp, very spicy crisps. You are seeing fruit-flavored smoothie bars, et cetera, et cetera. These kinds of snacks simply don't pair well with tea and coffee. And that's one of the big reasons why there has been a significant decline in tea and coffee volumes. So because what we are snacking with between meals, sometimes with a meal, and in some cases replacing a meal, what we are snacking with has changed the beverage pairings. And this is one of the reasons why you're seeing a significant opportunity in ready-to-drink spirits, but also hydration, wellness, as well as rejuvenation through affordable and sustainable hydration, as well as replenishment type ambient drinks. So something that happens adjacent to your category can sometimes affect your category. Another example of this is with Ozempic and medication regimens like that. So when we look at some of the GLP users and look at the data, what they tell us is that 66% of them have either stopped using alcohol or have significantly declined the consumption of alcohol, as we saw from the WHO figures, from Circana figures as well. Now, what is very interesting is among those who do drink alcohol, what they're saying is they prefer to have very low levels of alcohol, low fizz, protein agnostic beverages, and also beverages that don't make them, hydrate them, that don't make them feel uneasy or nauseous or don't amplify some of the side effects of GLP-1. So again, something that sits adjacent to the category, GLP-1s, which are by no means mainstream at the moment, but they can have a very fundamental shift in terms of the nature of demand in the alcohol business. The right-hand side slide, and I would ask you to look at this when you look at some of the share-outs after this presentation, but it identifies 4 or 5 key dimensions, small things that are very small at the moment, but are going to be structural in 10 years' time. So the first one is, again, the 18 to 24-year-old cohort who are very highly not drinking alcohol. Well, at the moment, they're a small part of the cohort, but in 10 years, they're the 30-year-olds, and by 2045, they are going to be the majority of the category. So again, a very small cohort. A lot of large manufacturers and retailers see these as outliers, but they're not outliers. They're the reality of the category going forward. Similarly, what you're seeing is the convergence, and Danny referred to the total beverages industry. You're seeing the convergence of alcohol and non-alcohol in one space. And that convergence is going to blur the lines of the category and the category code itself. You're seeing the clock speed of regulation, the clock speed of tariffs and taxes go up. So where there were taxes and changes in tax law every 2 or 3 years, you're seeing them now every 6 months in some parts of the world, where governments are trying to focus on shaping the nature of demand. So all of these ideas are to say that something that starts small in 2025 has the potential to change the shape of the category in 2034, 2035 and 2045. Sustainability, a couple of points on sustainability. We know that consumers are very, very interested in it. It is a latent demand. It's a purchase driver. It's not a choice driver. The question I then get asked is, so should I be continuing to invest in it? And the answer to that is a resounding yes, because many of the retailers in the room will attest to the fact that they have committed to having more sustainable marketed products in their shelves. Now, this is beyond just recycled packaging. There are particularly certain directions, certain areas where they're going to focus on. And across the European Union, it is largely focused on ingredient traceability. That's going to be a big part of the agenda. But you're also seeing locally sourced ingredients as well as products, not necessarily hyper-local, but locally sourced, lower food miles as being quite important to retailers in the European region. So the point really is it's a retailer-driven market for sustainability, not a consumer-driven market. But that being said, if you're looking for new listings with retailers, this is something that you can't avoid. A couple of points on disruptive innovation. Now, a lot of us are very excited about the 0% alcohol industry that's been created. But there is a fundamental issue with 0% alcohol, because the way it's described by particularly the alcohol industry with its 0% offerings is a very reductive chemical process. It's 0%. Whereas where the growth in the category is where the brand is exciting and aspirational. So it happens to be 0% alcohol. And I think this is a visual illustration of the shift that many of you will need to consider making in terms of how you approach demand going forward. It is not about 0.0 and the chemical reductive distillation process by which you get a clean beverage. It's much more about being able to create the aspirational brands of the future. Now, within that, there is a role for the alcohol industry to continue to make itself desirable and cool again in an appropriate and responsible way. And we have just a few examples of how we're seeing certain players in the space do that very successfully. Essentially, what you're seeing is the role for premiumization, sustainability, and experimentation. This is really critical for the younger demographics who are looking at beverages, but alcoholic beverages, and looking for new reasons to partake in that category. You're seeing the role for mood-enhancing beverages, alcoholic drinks and soft drinks combined, and we'll have an exciting panel discussion on this very, very shortly. But also the role for quick commerce, and that's redefining the nature of impulse in the space. So quick commerce, quick service delivery is a really crucial new capability that retailers have launched, which gives you the ability to be served at home or out of home at the point of desire. Functional beverages, particularly, and this is a point that Danny made very well, you are seeing the shift from general wellness to specialist wellness, whether it's bedside milk or a range of high-protein beverages or, use of new ingredients that have tangible benefits, whether it's, we're going beyond now the CBDs, you're going into various kinds of roots, plant-based drinks, dairy-based beverages, dairy-based energy drinks, and so on. Essentially what you're seeing is supporting general wellness has now moved on and become mainstream. And this is where functional beverages have a fundamental role to play. Zero-proof mocktails, these are just some illustrative examples of some of the big selling ones that we've seen in the European area. And finally, a comment around audiences. Now, this is a big topic because ultimately we are all interested in those consumers who will buy and make our brand successful. Essentially what's happening is they're getting harder and harder to reach. We've got very fragmented retail landscape, but we've also got a fragmented media landscape. And what we're finding is traditional media, traditional ambassadors and influencers in many cases are not able to connect with the audiences that we need. And this is where cutting-edge consumer and shopper engagement is becoming so important. So you're seeing the need for imperfect and authentic voices. What we're seeing is, of course, highly produced videos and various kinds of advertising, communication, and promotion. Of course, there is a role for that. But what we're finding is user-generated content has much higher levels of engagement as well as the ability to drive purchase, or disrupt the consumer purchase journey. So imperfect voices is something that we have noticed in our research that is, where someone in their pajamas, in their bedrooms talking about a particular beverage choice that they made. That can be sometimes as compelling as anything else. You're seeing virtual wine tastings, in-store merchandising, in-store storytelling, and also social media-led personalized engagement. These are some of the techniques that audiences are going to need to connect with your brands, and this is where the future really is. So as a very, very quick summary, new consumers, new needs, new rituals and occasions demand a redesign of the category, if you will. There is high growth in adjacent categories. You need to be able to see something that's small that's happening adjacent to your category because it may have a structural impact on demand in the next 10 years. Sustainability is a commercial opportunity, particularly when you're looking for new listings with retailers. Disruptive innovation can make the alcohol industry cool again, but it certainly means re-looking at the rules that made you successful. Some of the iconic brands and their iconic brand assets need to be reinvented for the future time. Low alcohol is about moderation and underconsumption. This is not anti-demand. It is about a new reason to consume. And finally, a reset in consumer and shopper engagement is needed. So it's really about setting the stage for that future of growth. Now, what I've done in the last few slides is I've given you a whole range of ideas, and I'm sure when you talk to your friends, talk to your colleagues, partners, you hear a whole range of interesting things that you should be considering, whether it's launching in emerging markets, licensing opportunities, it's all about the brand, premiumization. All of these things need to be considered. The question is, how do you do it? And so on the last slide, what we'd like to share with you is a tangible strategic logic to tie all of these insights that I've shared with you together. And essentially, it's in 5 steps. You don't have to do all 5 steps. You certainly don't have to do it in that serial order. But essentially, what we're saying is navigating the future horizon means that you've got to take these 5 key projects. If these projects are not on your current job list, you are missing a trick. The first one is aligning your product portfolio with consumer need states and attitudes. We are seeing that generational fundamental shift in consumer drivers and needs, and aligning your product portfolio to that is crucial. The second is accelerating innovation in high growth segments, whether it's ambient and chilled drinks, non-alcoholic beverages, and some of those functional beverages areas that we talked about. Implementing agile, data-driven decision-making, and particularly with your relationship with retailers, it is a data-based relationship. They need to see evidence of sales, incrementality, sales velocity. They need to see evidence that the brand experience is worth investing in, and therefore become or include you in their accelerator programs. Optimizing growth strategies around new channels, across channels, particularly with quick service delivery and so on. And then finally, redefining your occasion-based strategy, because consumers are interacting with the category in different ways. So that was our presentation for you today. European Beverages, New Horizons. We're very, very happy to continue this conversation in a break. But I leave you now with Danny and the rest of the group. Thank you.